The night was quiet, too quiet for Captain Aaron Blake's liking. A heavy mist covered the ground and hung low in the air, as if the world itself was waiting for something terrible to happen. The forest around him reached out with long, thin branches that looked like hands, each one ready to stop him. The road ended at a tall iron gate painted with faded red symbols, and above it hung a sign that simply read, ****, restricted area. No entry. ****, Aaron stood still for a moment. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying coldness that bit through his uniform. His mission orders were clear. He was to enter the area and confirm the truth about the one who lived there, the one the army called Asterisk, the Empress Asterisk. Many stories surrounded her. Some said she ruled over the night and fed on those foolish enough to cross her path. Others said she was just a myth left behind from another age. No one had ever come back to prove which version was true. He sighed and checked his gear for the 5th time. Rifle ready, flashlight working, the radio silent. His boots were covered in dirt and his heart beat faster than he wanted to admit. He had faced wars, storms, and chaos, but this silence, this empty world in front of him, felt worse. He placed his hand on the cold gate and pushed. The sound of metal groaning echoed into the dark, rolling like thunder through the valley. Beyond the gate, broken statues lined the path. Their faces were worn, their bodies half buried in vines. It looked like a forgotten kingdom. Stones beneath his feet were old, cracked, and covered in moss. Every few steps, he glanced over his shoulder without knowing why. He felt eyes watching him, though no one was there. A few hundred meters ahead, the shape of a grand mansion appeared through the mist. It was huge and silent, with towers rising toward the sky like frozen flames. Parts of the walls were broken, but even in ruin, the place commanded respect. Windows glimmered faintly, though he saw no lights inside. It looked like a house that refused to die. Aaron walked carefully, his boots clicking softly against the stones. He noticed the scent of roses mixed with dust, and something else, something sweet but cold, like snow melting on iron. The air was heavy. Every breath felt like a small struggle. As he neared the giant front doors, he felt doubt crawl into his mind. Why had command chosen him for this? Why send one human soldier into this zone when whole squads had vanished here before? He thought of turning back, but loyalty held him steady. He had sworn to complete every mission, no matter the cost. He placed his hand on the handle. It was metal, cold as winter. The door creaked open a few inches, just enough for him to slip inside. The air changed the moment he crossed the line. It was colder, thicker, and somehow alive. The hall stretched endlessly, lit only by pale moonlight leaking through tall windows. The floor was smooth black stone that seemed to reflect shadows instead of light. Grand portraits lined the walls, each showing men and women dressed in royal clothes. Their eyes painted so lifelike it felt as if they watched him move. Out the far end of the hall, a staircase rose into darkness. Aaron called out, his voice low but steady. "Captain Aaron Blake, United Earth Command. I come with peaceful intent." His words fell flat, swallowed by the hall. No echo answered, just the soft rustle of unseen fabric somewhere above him. He moved deeper, the flashlight beam dancing across the floor. Dust floated like slow snowflakes, but there were no cobwebs, no insects, no sign of life or decay. Someone was keeping this place clean. That thought made his skin prickle. He stopped beside a tall mirror framed in silver. His reflection looked pale, almost ghostly. He blinked once and thought he saw another figure standing behind him in the glass, a faint outline of a woman in a long gown. When he turned, there was no one there, only silence. A clock ticked, sudden and loud. It came from somewhere in the dark above. Each tick felt heavier, slower, as if measuring not time but his heartbeat. In a voice, come a whisper, soft but clear, slipping through the air like smoke. "You should not be here, soldier." Aaron froze. The voice was close, feminine, calm, but filled with something unsure, sorrow, perhaps, or warning. He raised his flashlight, sweeping the beam across the empty hall. No one, yet he could feel her. Someone unseen was standing only a few steps away. He swallowed hard but did not back away. "I was ordered to find you," he said quietly. "Then I'll leave, that's all." The whisper came again, almost a sigh now. "You will not leave the same way you entered." The light flickered once, then steadied. Somewhere deep in the house, a door opened slowly, though no wind had touched it. The scent of roses grew stronger, and for a moment, Aaron felt as if the house itself had begun to breathe. He tightened his grip on the rifle and stepped forward into the deeper part of the mansion, his courage carrying him where logic dared not follow. The gate behind him closed on its own, sealing the world outside. His mission had just begun. And the Empress, wherever she was, already knew he had arrived. The great hall was silent again after the whisper faded. Captain Aaron Blake stood still for a long moment, listening, waiting. Nothing moved. He waited until his heartbeat slowed, then stepped forward carefully. The house seemed to watch him. Every sound was louder than it should be, the soft tread of his boots, the faint whir of his flashlight, even his breathing. It was as if the air wanted to hold on to him. At the end of the hall, a pair of tall doors stood half open. Beyond them, faint golden light came from candles or lamps. He pushed the doors wider. Inside was a long room with high windows and curtains that moved slightly, though there was no wind. A table stood in the center, covered in silver dishes and crystal glasses. None of it was dusty, and that frightened him more than any ruin could have done. He took a slow step into the room. The air smelled of vanilla and roses. Then, from the far end, he saw her. A woman sat in a carved chair made of dark wood, one hand resting against her cheek. She looked straight at him, calm but curious. Her hair was black and fell like silk over her shoulders. Her skin was pale, and her eyes shone softly, gray with hints of silver. She was too still, too graceful, and yet very human. Aaron froze, his soldier's instincts warning him he was in the presence of someone powerful. She spoke first, her voice smooth and low. "You entered my home without permission, Captain. Do they no longer teach manners in your world?" Aaron lowered his weapon and bowed slightly out of respect, though his hand still trembled near the rifle. "My orders were to learn who truly lives here. Stories say this land belongs to someone long forgotten." "Long forgotten," she smiled faintly. "That is a kind way to say feared." He wanted to ask her name, but her presence made each word feel heavy. He looked around the room again, noticing more signs of lifelike smoke from the candles, a faint warmth near the fireplace. Someone had lit all of it not long ago. Finally he said, "You are the Empress." "I was," she said after a moment. "Though that title means little now. People outside these walls called me a curse, and in time I let them believe it." Aaron stepped closer, careful not to seem like a threat. "Then tell me what's true." Her eyes studied him. "You are not afraid?" "I'm trained to face fear," he said softly. "It's not always to understand it." Her smile widened, though there was sadness in it. Honest words. "You are different from the others they sent before you." The last man claimed bravery and left only blood behind. Aaron felt a chill at her tone, but something in her voice also carried guilt rather than cruelty. "What happened to them?" he asked carefully. "They entered this house with greed or hatred," she said. "Men who thought they could take power from me or destroy me. I gave them what they desired in end. However, walk in without pride. That is new." Aaron looked at her hands and noticed they were too still. The nails trimmed with perfect care, fingers elegant but strong. He remembered the stories about what she was, how she could live through centuries, feeding not on food but on something darker. Yet looking at her now, he couldn't see a monster. He saw loneliness wrapped in silk. She gestured to the table. "Sit. You have traveled far just to speak with a ghost." He hesitated, then sat across from her. His chair creaked softly. Wine shimmered in a glass before him. For a second he wondered if he should drink it, but something in her quiet eyes told him it would not harm him. He took a small sip. It was surprisingly warm, like fire and fruit mixed together. She said, "You were brave to come here. Why risk your life for a report your superiors will likely ignore?" Aaron looked into the glass. "Because someone had to know the truth. Every mystery becomes a weapon in the wrong hands. I don't want war started over rumors." The Empress nodded, her gaze softening. "Then you are wiser than most soldiers I have met." He looked up. "You've met others?" Her expression changed, remembering something long ago. "Many, before the world called me legend. Before I became nothing more than fear in their bedtime tales." She stood slowly and walked toward one of the tall windows. Moonlight framed her face, showing a beauty that was almost sorrowful. Once, I was loved by my people. Once, I ruled not through fear but grace. But time is cruel. It takes not only life but memory. Now even my own reflection struggles to know who I am. Aaron watched her carefully. There was no madness in her speech, only pain. And yet, he said quietly, you still protect this place. She turned to him, her eyes glowing softly. Someone must. The world outside forgets, but I remain because if I leave, everything that came before me disappears completely. Aaron set the glass down. Maybe it's time someone helped you remember what it means to live. Her lips parted in surprise. And for a moment she looked almost human again, all sadness and wonder mixed together. Then her tone changed, low and uncertain. Be careful, Captain. You speak of things you don't understand. He met her gaze evenly. Then teach me. The silence that followed said more than words could. The candles flickered, and the mist outside pressed close to the windows. Somewhere deep in the mansion, a bell chimed once. She looked at him again, this time with quiet curiosity. Perhaps you will be different after all. Aaron didn't know what she meant, but he could feel the line between danger and destiny beginning to blur. Captain Aaron Blake woke the next morning inside a room he did not remember entering. His body rested in a large bed covered in soft white sheets, and sunlight streamed weakly through half-closed curtains. The sound of distant birds filled the air, though he had seen no birds near the mansion the night before. For a moment he thought he had dreamed everything, but when he looked down, he was still wearing his uniform. His rifle leaned against the wall beside him, and his boots were neatly placed by the door. He sat up slowly and rubbed his eyes. His mind replayed every moment from the night before the whisper. The woman, her eyes that seemed to see through him. He knew she was no ordinary queen, but she had not harmed him, at least not yet. Instead, she had spoken with him like someone who needed to be heard. That thought stayed with him. The door opened softly, and a young woman entered carrying a tray of food. She looked frightened but polite. Her hair was tied back, and her dress was plain. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "The Queen wishes you to eat before you meet her again." Aaron blinked. "The Queen? She's awake already? She does not sleep much?" the woman said, setting the tray down. Bread, fruit, and clear water sat neatly arranged, though he wondered where these things had come from in this lonely place. "What is your name?" he asked. "Clara," she said quietly. "I serve in the house. Are there many of you here?" She shook her head. "Only a few. The Queen keeps to herself. The rest left long ago." He wanted to ask more, but she slipped out of the room before he could. He ate quickly, though. His mind never left the memory of Queen Alara. When he finished, he washed his face and put on his jacket. His footsteps echoed down the long hallway as he made his way back toward the grand hall. He found her standing at the center of it, facing one of the tall windows. The light framed her figure, and for the first time, he saw faint color in her cheeks. It struck him that even a little sunlight could change her completely. "You slept well, Captain?" she asked without turning. "Well enough," he replied. "I didn't expect comfort here." She turned to him with a quiet smile. "Comfort is a habit. Even I forget how much I miss it." He studied her carefully. "Said you once ruled kindly. What happened?" A shadow crossed her face. She walked toward a large painting hanging on the wall, a younger version of herself standing beside a tall man wearing armor. "He was a great knight," she said softly. "My husband, my protector. He believed our power could be shared, that we could live among others without fear. But men are quick to turn love into war. They attacked him and called me unnatural. I fought for him, but I lost him and my kingdom in the same night." Aaron listened quietly. He could see the pain in her eyes, but also strength. "You isolated yourself," he said gently. "To survive, I protected them." Her voice grew low but firm. "If I walked among them, they would see me as a ghost. Here I wait and remember what life was." He took a breath. "You could leave this place. The world has changed. People are not the same." She gave a quiet laugh, almost bitter. "Changed. Humans still fear what they do not understand. Even you, soldier, carry fear inside you now." He looked into her silver eyes. "Maybe. But fear doesn't have to rule us." Her expression softened again. "You speak like someone who has seen too much death." He nodded slowly. "War teaches that if you stop seeing people as human, you lose yourself. Her gaze lingered on him, as though his words were unfamiliar gifts. You might be right. Perhaps I stopped seeing myself as human long ago. He took a step closer. Then let me prove to you that you still are. Before she could answer, the sound of something heavy falling echoed from deeper in the mansion. She turned sharply. Her peaceful tone vanished, replaced by an edge of command. Stay here, she ordered. Aaron ignored that and followed her as she hurried down a narrow corridor lined with broken mirrors. They came into a side chamber where dust filled the air. A tall man in dark clothes stood there, his face cold and pale like stone. When he saw the queen, he bowed. Forgive me, my lady, but I have urgent news. Aaron stayed quiet, watching. The man's voice trembled slightly as he continued. There is unrest among the guards. Some whisper they will not remain loyal. The queen's expression hardened. They forget who gave them shelter. I will remind them. When the man left, Aaron said, Your own people might rise against you. It happens, she said calmly. Not all who serve wish for peace. Some crave power. They think my strength is weakened. He frowned. Then they are fools. She looked at him again, the faint hint of a smile returning. You speak as though you would defend me. He held her gaze. Maybe I would. You don't seem like the monster stories describe. Perhaps you should not trust me so quickly, she whispered. But I find that I do not want you to leave. The silence between them deepened, heavy, but not cold. Aaron saw something fragile in her hope, faint, but real. When she spoke again, her voice was almost tender. Tomorrow, I will show you what remains of my kingdom. Then you can decide if I am still worth saving. Aaron nodded slowly, knowing his mission was no longer about reports or duty. The truth he had come to find was changing shape before his very eyes. And though he could not explain why, he no longer feared this place, or her. The next morning began with quiet light falling through cracks in the mansion's tall windows. Captain Aaron Blake followed Queen Alara through narrow stone halls that smelled faintly of dust and roses. Her steps were silent, gliding across the floor. Aaron felt that every corner of this place carried memories she had tried to forget. They walked through corridors lined with broken paintings and empty armor stands. He noticed the way her eyes lingered on some doors, as if opening them might let out ghosts. This was once full of people, she said softly. Music, laughter, lessons, children. Only echoes live here. Aaron looked around and said, It could live again. Perhaps, she said, if I still believed in beginnings. They came to a balcony that overlooked the valley. Morning mist rolled below like a silver ocean. In the distance, Aaron saw stone buildings half buried by vines. Your city? He asked. She nodded. What remains of it? My people called it Dawn Hall. It was built to welcome both day and night. Now only night remains. Her voice shook slightly, and Aaron felt something heavy in his chest. He said quietly, You don't have to guard ruins alone, she turned to him. Do not pity me, Captain. I did not call you here to feel sorry for me. He held her gaze. Then why did you let me stay? For a moment she was silent. Then she said, Because you remind me of what I once was. Before fear replaced my heart. They stood in silence, the wind tugging gently at her dark hair. She looked younger in the daylight, less a legend, more a woman who had carried too many lonely years. As they turned to leave the balcony, the faint sound of voices reached them from the courtyard below. Ilara's calm expression tightened. Stay close, she said. Aaron followed her down a spiral stairway that led to a grand gate at the rear of the mansion. There stood half a dozen men, dressed in black uniforms, armed with blades and spears. The leader, a tall man named Corin, stepped forward and bowed stiffly. My lady, he said, we bring news. The outer guards say strangers approach the valley. Aaron frowned slightly. Strangers. Corin gave him a hard look before turning back to the queen. We have kept watch for years, but now flames burn in the forest. We must act before they reach us. Alara's tone was cool. What do you suggest? We defend what is ours, Corin said, his voice growing bolder. You have protected these halls with words and walls, but words do not stop fire. Let us fight before it is too late. The queen's eyes narrowed. You were once loyal, Corin. Do you now seek war, when peace is our only chance? He hesitated. Peace cannot save what is already dying. Aaron could see the tension growing. He stepped forward. She's right. Violence will destroy what you're trying to protect. We can handle this smartly. Corrin's eyes flashed. And who is this, my lady? Why do you let a soldier of men speak for us? Ilara raised a hand. He speaks with reason. You will stand down until I say otherwise. Corrin bowed low, but the anger in his eyes was clear. When he and his men withdrew, Aaron muttered, "That one's trouble." The queen looked toward the mountains. He was once my most trusted captain, but time changes loyalty. Fear changes hearts faster. Aaron said nothing but watched her face carefully. She was thinking deeply, her eyes far away. After a long pause, she turned to him. "You came to learn who I am," she said. "Now you will see what my rule really means. Tonight we dine with all who remain loyal. Then you'll understand why they fear both me and what waits beyond these walls." That evening, the great dining hall was lit with hundreds of candles. The air shimmered with gold light, and the long table was filled with people, some young, some older, all of them strangely quiet. Aaron sat beside Ilara at the center. To him, the evening felt like the calm before a storm. He watched faces that smiled without joy, eyes that darted toward shadows instead of looking at one another. During the meal, Ilara stood and raised a glass. "We have guarded this place for centuries," she said clearly, "but we have not lived. Tonight we remember that life still belongs to us." Murmurs filled the room, uncertain and fearful. From the far end of the table, Corrin rose to speak. "Life ends when weakness leads. We stand on the edge of destruction, my queen. Maybe new hands must guide us now." The hall fell silent. Aaron's hand drifted toward his weapon. Ilara's face remained calm, but her voice trembled with controlled anger. "You forget your place, Corrin." "No," Corrin said with a bitter smile. "I remember it all too well." He stepped back sharply, snapping his fingers. Several men at the door drew their weapons. The guests gasped. Aaron leapt up, pulling his rifle and moving in front of the queen. "Protect her," shouted someone, but chaos erupted before the words finished. Glass shattered. Torches fell. Corrin's men moved fast, but Aaron moved faster. His shots rang out, sharp and clean. Ilara's guards rushed to defend, but confusion filled the hall. Amid the smoke and noise, Ilara's voice cut through, strong and almost inhuman. "Enough." Her command froze the room. Corrin's eyes widened. He took one frightened step back. "You still have that power?" Lara walked toward him slowly. Her voice was steady and cold. "I did not lose everything. Not yet." He dropped his weapon, trembling. The silence that followed felt endless. Aaron lowered his rifle, but kept his eyes on her. She looked different, irradiant, terrible, and alive. When she faced him again, her tone softened. "Now you see what peace costs me?" Aaron didn't move. The night outside pressed against the windows, thick and dark. Somewhere distant, thunder rolled over the valley. He had entered this place as a soldier. Now standing beside her in the candlelight, he knew this battle was no longer made of steel and blood, but of hearts learning again to trust the light. Morning came slowly after the night of battle. The once grand dining hall was quiet now. Broken glass lay across the floor, and the smell of smoke still hung in the air. Captain Aaron Blake moved through the wreckage carefully, searching for any signs of life. The great candles had burned low, leaving faint trails of gray smoke that curled lazily toward the ceiling. Queen Ilara sat near the main window, her eyes fixed on the pale sky outside. The storm had passed, but she looked tired, her skin pale and her hands trembling. Yet she held her head high, the way only someone born to lead could. When Aaron approached, she turned slightly and gave a small, weak smile. "It is over," he said quietly. "For now," she replied. "But peace built on fear never lasts." He studied her face. There were tiny cuts from flying glass, but she did not seem to notice them. "Corrin?" he asked. "Gone," she said. "He fled into the forest with what remains of his loyal men. Perhaps they will return. Perhaps they will find somewhere else to haunt." Aaron nodded slowly. He held them back with more than words. She did not answer. Instead, she looked toward her trembling hands. "My power is a burden," she said softly. "It was never meant to rule. It was meant to heal. But humans only understand strength when it frightens them. Aaron moved closer and gently touched her shoulder. Then show them something different. Show them you still have the kind of strength they forgot a human one. Her eyes rose to his. You believe such a thing still lives in me? Yes, he said without hesitation. I've seen it. Silence filled the room again. Through the broken window, sunlight touched her face. For the first time, she did not turn away from it. She closed her eyes, and for a brief moment, her whole expression softened. Later that day, they walked through the courtyard together. The ground was wet and dark from the rain. Fallen leaves clung to their boots. Aaron noticed the cracked fountain at the center, dry for what seemed 100 years. Ilara stared at it for a long time before kneeling beside its edge. This once ran with clear water, she said. Children used to play here. The sound of their laughter kept the night away. Aaron looked at her carefully, then start again. Rebuild. Let others come. She gave a faint laugh, gentle but unsure. They will not come. The world outside does not welcome ghosts. Maybe not a ghost, he said, but a queen who wants to live again. Her eyes widened slightly at his words. Long silence followed, broken only by the soft breath of wind. Then she stood and took his hand. Her touch was cold, but steady. You speak as if this is simple, she said. But if I leave here, everything I know fades. My duty, my history, even my name might disappear. Sometimes Aaron said quietly, letting go is the only way to keep something alive. She looked out across the valley, where mist was rising like slow smoke. Then perhaps, she said, you have come not to report me, but to free me. He did not deny it. Maybe it's both. That night, the mansion came alive in a way it had not in centuries. Fires burned in the great hall to chase the cold away. Remaining guards, though still loyal, gathered under Ilara's orders. Aaron watched as she spoke to them with quiet confidence. You stayed when others fled, she told them. You fought not because you feared me, but because you believed there was still something left to protect. I will not forget that. But we no longer hide. Dawn will touch these walls again, and you will help me bring it. The men and women bowed their heads. They did not cheer. The respect ran deeper than noise. When the meeting ended, Aaron found her on the balcony again. The stars glowed faintly above. He leaned on the stone railing beside her. You meant what you said, he told her. I did, she said. But words are the easy part. The world will not trust me. I am still the monster they told stories about. Then let them meet you as I did, Aaron said. Truth is louder than rumors. Ilara turned slowly toward him. There was a rare warmth in her eyes now, the kind that came from hope, not power. You speak like someone who has forgotten fear, she said softly, smiled. I stopped being afraid the moment I realized you hadn't killed me yet. For the first time, she laughed a real laugh, light and human. The sound filled the empty courtyard like a melody. Before dawn, she walked alone through every hall of the mansion. Aaron followed a few steps behind, watching as she touched the old walls, the broken gates, and the silent rooms. It looked as if she was saying goodbye. When they reached the great iron gate, she stopped and looked beyond it, the world she had avoided for hundreds of years. Light began to spill from the horizon, turning the sky gold. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again, letting the first sunlight fall across her face. Aaron stood beside her, silent but proud. She whispered, half to herself, So this is morning. He nodded. You've waited a long time to see it. She smiled faintly. Too long. But maybe it was worth the wait. The gates opened slowly on their rusted hinges. The world outside was quiet but a live field stretching in the distance, trees moving in the wind, the smell of life everywhere. Together, they stepped through. The weight of the old mansion stayed behind them, while the light ahead grew brighter with every step. And when they reached the edge of the ruins, the woman once known as the VampireEmpress turned her face fully to the sun. No longer shadow, no longer legend, but simply human again. Aaron looked at her and said, Welcome back to the world. She answered softly, Thank you, soldier. In that moment, everything that had been broken, land, heart, and history, began to heal.